and welcome to another edition of Talkable San Leandro, a series of community conversations with people who are making a difference. I'm your host, Wayne Gregori, and I'm pleased to say this morning we have Mike McLaughlin with us. He is the superintendent of the San Leandro School District. Mike, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, good. You know, the last time we spoke, it was at the Breakfast Club, right here in San Leandro, where camaraderie and delicious pork products are. And you know, we have camaraderie, but I'm afraid the sausage and bacon is lacking here. But hey, if you're really hungry, we'll go out and get some.
There you go. There you go.
You know, I wanted to say that it was a good meeting we had last time because it sounded like there was a lot of progress. But I personally knew there was a lot of progress because being a realtor, you know, my wife and I see people coming and going. You know, people who go, you know, capital G, and then people who go for other reasons. Yeah. And a lot of people, they go for the schooling, you know. And when we first started, we heard that a lot. Yeah. And then slowly but surely we heard less and less, and you still hear it. But it's been a trend that we've been able to kind of, through our professional lives, you know, we've been able to see that. And so why don't we start out by you telling us a little bit about, you've been in, how long have you been here?
Well, I'm going on my 6th year in San Leandro Unified. This is my 20th year as a superintendent. Okay. And yeah, it's a passion with my family. I'm a third generation superintendent. Okay. My father was a superintendent. I got uncles who are superintendent. My grandfather was a superintendent.
There's some family wisdom.
A lot of teachers, and there's more following as we go. So enjoying it.
Good. And so when you came in, what were some of the problems that you were addressing 6 years ago, and how have you moved through some of those?
Yeah, I mean, when you come into a new, first of all, before you come into a new district or as a superintendent, I try to look at what's a match for my skill set. A passion of mine is being a big student advocate, and I want to make sure I can come into a district where I can bring a better educational journey to a student. If it's a place that's already running, doing great, that's not for my skill set. Okay. So there were two factors. I looked at San Leandro and said, yeah, I think my skill set matches where they need to go, and where they are and where they need to go. And I was also impressed with the community buy-in. I saw that you had bonds passed. I saw there was a parcel passed. When you see those things, you know a community is invested in providing at least some of those things that aren't provided by the state anymore, right? So when you see that, you go, wow, okay, at least I have some people there that really want to see a change. Right. So when I came in, you look at those board members, they tell you what their perspective is, and then you go on this little journey of talking to people, observing, bringing in your leaders, because it's all about the leaders. Right. It comes from the top. It does. And so what I thought was happening, it was probably a little worse than what I thought was happening, but it was coming from the top, a lack of vision, a lack of focus, kind of all over the place where we were. So the first thing we did was talk to the board about a strategic action plan. There was nothing like that going on. There was no plan of what we were going to go to. What did you want to achieve?
No expectations. People just kind of lost and kind of moving through
life. Just going through everyday things. Yeah, that's what the state wants us to do. We're going to do this. So, you know, we spent a day talking about what did you want to change? You know, and one of them was, you know, the reputation. You know, that's why we rebranded. You know, that was part of the first 3 years. And then I took that plan that the board said they wanted to do, and I took it to the community. I was in a lot with the Rotary Club and in Kiwanis and as many social groups as I could get to and say, what do you think? Right. Do you think these are the 5 areas we should attack for the next 3 years? They said, yes, these are the things. So once you have that in place and everybody's on board, we attacked them. So right off the bat, I knew that I had good teachers. I think I had some good staff. I had some people that just needed to be led and believe in something. They needed to believe in their organization. So the first 3 years, we called it when you talk about building houses, you're a realtor. It was the foundation and the pipes, and we had to build the infrastructure up. So we had to change the leaders. Okay, we had to make some adjustments here. We had to look at our budget. We had to look at clean up stuff. So you can't move forward with all these great, sexy ideas until you can put in the bones. So we were very proud of the point that we got that. You know, and it's hard because people have been here for a long time. Yeah. A lot of personal feelings hurt, things like, and the backstory is a lot of people don't understand that we really help people, even though they weren't with our organization. We tried to help them get jobs other places because these are people. But we had to make a change. We had to do something, and so people could see right away that we were making change. Slowly, the buy-in was coming in, but we had to stay consistent. If we said we were going to do something, we had to follow through and do it. Right. Okay. So. You know, so it's the academics. I'm just a strong believer. If you do everything right, and you follow through, the positives follow.
Right.
Okay, and what you've seen lately is we've had some few recognitions, not only locally but nationally, for the work we've done. And people come to me, how did you do it? How did you? It's not just me. This has been a group effort. It's the whole town. It's the board. It's people have supported me and my staff. So when we make a change, they're supporting us. Going, we know it's going to be tough, but we're going to keep moving forward because we think it's the right thing to do. And we've seen a change. So we put in the technology because, it's in today's world. If our kids don't have those skills, they will not be able to compete. And so we had the fiber loop already in San Leandro. It was like, well, how do you get the money to get that? Well, we went out and we found this great bond that we could work with a business, and that helped us get some dollars right away so we could get the loop in and stuff like that. So, I mean, there's millions of little things that came from a small strategic plan, because what I call a strategic action plan is it's like cleaning your garage. You go to your garage to do one thing, and then you find all these other things, and next thing you know, this whole other project turns out. So at the end of the year, we're going, these are the five goals we set out to do, but look at the other things we did. It gets infectious. And so so that's the model.
And enrollment is up.
Enrollment is up. I saw decline enrollment when I was here. I saw a lack of equity in the classroom. When I talk equity, kids not getting access to certain classes, things like that. Lack of access and equity for teachers to learn more. Not only our teachers, our classified support staff, we're not only not giving any support, they were given funds for like new equipment. I mean, our facility department was run down. If you're going by your school as a parent, if you're moving in this town, you're going, boy, that school looks pretty bad from the street. Well, you're probably not going to walk inside and see what's happening. So it was a revamp of everything. Let's look at our facility department. What department's already working well? Food service was working well, so we could just say, we don't have to worry about that right now.
Well, I remember you told us a story about, when you drive by a school, you want it to look nice, but you didn't have enough money to repaint the whole thing. But we repainted the fronts of the schools, and then you worked beyond that. But at a certain point, it's curb it, and people want to be proud of their schools and where they're dropping their kids off. And it was a great idea because I tell you, it fooled me. I'm driving all these schools, I go, hey, this looks great, and it helps. It's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, people don't understand. To paint a whole school is millions of dollars, and it's it's a discussion either we have today or at some point where we don't take enough time to understand how we're financed. The state doesn't give us money to fix our schools. So when we only had like a certain amount of dollars left, I said, well, I could do maybe one school, but then I got 12 others that don't look good. So we talk to everybody again, not just making a decision. Let's talk to everybody about it. Okay, let's do a little refresh on the fronts and get them going, and then as dollars come by, we can learn to modernize the schools inside as much. And we're doing that since the community helped us pass our last bond, we're starting to modernize a little more stuff inside. So it sometimes didn't happen overnight, but at least for now, it looks nice, and the kids feel good. They walk. Kids and parents walk into school. I mean, it's like, wow.
Kids know they know when resources are being spent on their behalf, and they know if the society is valued them by essentially creating a safe, clean environment for them.
It's a self-esteem issue. I used to teach in the inner city at Sacramento, and it was an eye-opener for me because you see kids having to come from a home that is run down or a project, housing, and then they come to a school that's run down. So how are they ever going to have the self-esteem to think they're getting out? So at least if you can change their environment at school.
And people care. The grown-up people care about their well-being, and it shows in their surroundings.
Yes.
Well, good. Well, listen, I pushed this. I pushed our meeting up on Facebook and some social media, and I got a bunch of questions.
Good.
I got personally, I got a couple of questions as well. Hey,
sure.
It's my talk show.
Let them fly.
Let them fly. So, some years ago, we watched Michael Moore's movie. I didn't even know what it was going to be about, but we went with some friends, and it was called Who Do We Invade Next? And it was kind of a goofy name, but he went out and kind of compared America to all these other first world countries, right? And I remember he went to Finland to talk to them about their educational system, because the Finnish kids, they finish first, or no pun intended. And so he went there and talked to the Minister of Education and asked them, and they told them flat out, the kids don't have homework, the younger kids don't have any homework, their days are shorter, and the whole idea is let kids be kids, and what they learn in school sticks better because when they get out of school, they're out there being kids, right? And then he asked them, well, how did you come up with these ideas? And he goes, well, America did all the studies, you guys just ignore them, and then we took them and ran with them, right? And so that was a little embarrassing. So with regard to the amount of homework kids have, I don't have any kids in school now, but I certainly remember those late nights doing homework. Is there any opportunity to, for younger kids to to look at reducing that or trying to do that, to see how that works?
Yeah, I think it's it kind of comes and goes, whether you're going to get a lot. I mean, I think that there's an effort to limit, like I said, it depends on where you go and what their theory is. So, for example, my little guy goes to another district, and guess what? He gets a packet of homework, and my wife is like pulling her hair out, going, why is a first grader doing this much homework during a week, right? And so that's their challenge. In my previous school, he didn't have as much.
Right.
So, it's one of the things we're doing is in the middle schools and the high schools, we're going to more of a block schedule, which means you're pushing more of the work during the day.
Yeah, right.
Get it done during the day. More skill-based stuff when you go home.
Right.
Okay, it's you're absolutely right. Michael Moore was right. It's we know all the answers, but no one wants to put any money or support behind what's right. Class size reduction was the perfect example. Yeah. The number was 12. Okay, the governor at the time, I think it was Wilson, said, you know what, I'm not going to fund 12. I'm not going to pay this, I'm like this. So they went with 20. Well, again, it wasn't it didn't follow data, it didn't follow the research, so it didn't work.
Right.
Okay, so California is an interesting system. We like to put out all these, there's a lot of demands, there's a lot of, testing, dashboards, all these things come out, and never any support.
Right.
So as school districts and superintendents, we try to balance it all and go, okay, what do we believe in? Okay, how do we make sure we satisfy the needs of the state, but still keep moving in the philosophy? So we're big believers in the project-based learning. We believe in teaching to the whole child here in San Leandro. We don't believe in drill and kill, which means, lecture, test.
And essentially teaching to the test.
Teaching to the test. So what comes with that is not always a good result on a bubbled test.
Right.
But that does not mean our students aren't performing well.
Right.
So I ask anybody that says, where's my kid? How's my kid going to do in this score? And I said, you need to come to a graduation. Because when you come to a high school graduation, I'm the one out there looking at, with diplomas. You see students walking up, because now they write everything on their hats and where they're going. You see kids going to colleges all throughout the United States, kids going to trade schools, art schools. Our kids are going places.
They are. And
they're successful. And it's not all based on UC or, if a kid doesn't go to UC, your district's not, no. I mean, our kids are
I'll
going.
just tell you, my kids, all three of my kids went to Cal, right? And I remember my youngest, when she got there, they all went through San Leandro, the city government program. I don't recall the name right now, but in any case, through that program, she met a lot of kids through San Leandro High. And when she got there, she's telling me she knew all these kids, and I go, where are they from? San Leandro High. And I said, and people get the wrong impression that that you can't get that kind of education to feed into a school like that. And you absolutely can. We see it, and there was the proof there. Good.
I mean, I'm a product of public schools. Yeah. My dad was a superintendent. Said, how can you believe and lead a system that you're not attending, your kids don't attend? So,
I'll just tell you personally, right? Our kids, when we lived in San Francisco, we put them in public schools. We wanted to be a part of that system. When we participated, it was a consent decree school in Noe Valley, and there was a lot of kids came from Visitation Valley. It was a huge education for my kids and us, and I never felt more connected to my community than when my kids were in public school. Okay, so we've talked about Michael Moore. Listen, last week, it seems like a week ago, there were like a bunch of articles in the New York Times about kind of the screens and how screens are kind of, they've become the new, bad thing, right? And so here's some of these articles. It says, dark consensus about screens and kids. Silicon Valley nannies are phone police for kids. So nannies now, they don't use phones, and in fact, no screens in the house, right? The digital gap between rich and poor kids is not what we expected. That is, we expected the rich kids to have all the technology and the poor kids not. Well, it seems that, the people in Silicon Valley who are building the bits and bytes that are addicting us and our kids have come to Jesus moment saying, we don't need, and it was interesting when Steve Jobs came out with the iPad, right? The first thing they asked him was, how do you kids like it? He goes, oh, my kids don't use this thing.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I know that it's hard to turn the ship of state on a dime here, but knowing that, you know, knowing this about kind of the dark side of this technology, is there any conversation amongst school board members about limiting kids, you know, exposure to this stuff?
Yeah, well, I think there's also a misperception that because we have computers in the school, that's all they're looking at all day,
Right.
which isn't true. They're in carts when it's time to utilize them. They pull them out. It's a tool.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a tool that trades today, and our kids need to know how to
Sure,
use it.
absolutely.
But in no way, I would say it's probably less than 20% or 30% of their day.
Good.
Now, the cell phone issue, you know, with the older kids is, you know, there are some districts that have limited them. You know, they have to put them in a bag before they come
Right.
in, or things like
San
that.
Leandro.
We don't do it because kids are pretty respectful at our high school.
Yeah.
When it's time for learning, they put them away in their backpack or stuff like. So if we thought it was a problem, we'd put them away. It's a balance. You
Right.
know, in my house, we still read hard books to our kid. We don't download them on an iPad and read them on there. You know,
Right,
it's
right.
you have to limit. I know we haven't had a discussion yet because we haven't seen an issue yet where we feel like we're pushing too much screen time. You
Right,
know, we feel like it's more of a tool for them to learn on. Now, of course, the Silicon Valley, some of those kids have had these screens for a lot longer than our kids.
Yeah.
Okay, they've been inundated. You know,
Right.
they've had them in their classrooms. We're just into probably our third and a half year of being one-to-one.
Right,
So
right.
there's a little catch-up for our kids to get with just learning the technology itself in the classroom. But I'm with them. I came home, my wife read the same article, and she goes,
Yeah.
"What are you doing about it, Soup?" You know, as
Okay.
my biggest critic at home, and I said, I agree with you. I love it that a lot of school districts are going to like a screen-free Wednesday or stuff like that, where we're just not using any computers.
Right.
But then when I put it out to some of my staff, there's many days where we don't use them.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think it's something that we're thinking about, how we balancing these things with technology. I don't see it going anywhere, but I am concerned. I think
Yeah.
other people are concerned about the more one-on-one.
Right, right.
I see it with some of my younger staff that you go to a meeting and they all got their computers up. So we have to purposely say, put them down
Yeah, yeah.
and let's have a conversation.
Right.
Because bring a yellow notepad. You don't really need to bring the computer to every meeting. And they see it. I try to show by example. I never bring a laptop to any of my meetings.
Right.
Because I don't need to. This is when I have my cabinet meetings, this is conversation.
Yeah.
You know, I can just bring a notepad. Let's
Yeah.
take some notes. But it's a cultural thing. But, you know, like, I was watching a Warrior game last night. And probably a lot of Silicon Valley people own those tickets because they're very expensive. And guess what I watched them doing during the whole game?
Yeah, right. They're on their phone.
So I think there's a lot of talk about what sounds right, but I think it's still a big cultural problem out
Yeah.
there with these phones. Everywhere you go, airports, everywhere I go, I see lines. I drive by BART every day. I see everybody
Yeah.
with these
the
screens.
trouble
So-
is, you know, these Silicon Valley companies, they spend hundreds of millions of dollars learning how to create addictive products, and they're winning, right? But you mentioned it. It's San Leandro High, I guess, who got through a grant, or their kids now put their phones in the bag. I listened to a news broadcast with a couple of teachers, and they were amazed at how transformative it was in the campus. And I know they got a grant, and none of this stuff is cheap, even the little bags you put them in there.
Yeah.
But is that something that we might think of trying at
It
one of our
could,
schools?
you know, like I said, it's something we check. You know,
Yeah.
we talk to teachers. Are they? You know, it's once in a while actually you get a problem with the teacher having a problem with a kid with their phone out.
Right.
So they're able to police themselves.
It's more the kids, you know, even walking down the halls and
Yeah.
having lunch. That is, these teachers said that it was a throwback to 25 years ago,
Yeah.
where kids are just talking to each other. They're not
Yeah.
looking at their
It
phone.
could be something we look into. Like I
Yeah.
said, it's another systematic thing
Right.
that you would have to implement. You know, who's going to collect the phones? How are you going to get them back out?
Right.
You know, all these things. I'd be interested to go over there and find out how
Yeah.
are they operating that, and is their high school as big as, you know,
Sure.
3,000 phones in bags?
Right.
How does that get? I mean,
Yeah.
it'd be interesting.
And do you sit down with the other supers in the other districts? Do you guys ever have regular meetings?
We
or get
meet once a
together?
month at the county.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, and so
Okay.
there's superintendent's meeting. And of course, we have, you know, I'm on certain national groups, and I've been a superintendent now 20 years, so I'm asked to be on other things
Yeah.
to listen to the trends. And we've heard about the shutdown. This is the first I've heard of the bag. When I saw that the other day, I go, oh, okay. I'll bring it up at my at one of my soups meetings and say, hey, who's doing this?
Yeah,
to see what the trends are and how, because that's what happens. People go up and down and new things happen.
It was funny because when you say it's like, how do they implement? And it was this news broadcast, they had a video camera and they watch the kids. They pop them in this little bag. And there's some little magnetic thing when they walk out of the class and then they swipe it, bag opens, boom, they're gone.
Yeah.
It's a neat little thing.
It sounds neat,
low tech, but
it's just, we've done so many initiatives. Because they're not one-to-one there either in these districts. So our initiatives have been so much on our teachers that this has been a period where we're kind of saying, we're not going to give you another thing to do, because they are about at the end of their thing. So just, for example, we just put in last year, every one of our classrooms has got a 70-inch Promethean board that won't make sense to anybody else, but it's a large flat screen in their classroom that's on wheels, that's touchscreen, that is giving the teachers the ability to flip a classroom so they can continually move to different spots and be more interactive. Kids are actually directing the lessons and doing things like that. So
you can move the board to the kids through the class.
No more just sitting up at the wide erase board, chalkboard, and kids are all looking straight ahead. It's a more interactive space. So yeah, I think that sounds like a great idea, and God, I'd love to see kids without the phone. It's amazing what they do when they don't have them around, especially adults.
Well, good. Well, that's good. So I've got some questions from some people as well, who chimed in on Nextdoor. And so, with this increased enrollment, do we have enough space to accommodate all these new students? I mean, are we running up against any limits there?
No, I think that the misperception is you always used to have more kids. So the space is still there. You were declining. So we're scooching up to the point where we're probably still about 500 kids or 600 kids close to being close to a max. So it's we're bringing kids back. That's another misnomer out there. They're bringing all these kids from other districts. Not true. The majority of them are San Leandro kids that were disenfranchised with the district, and they were going to private schools, charter schools, other school districts. So they're coming back. It's the discussion with space is always if people decide to go back to class size reduction in the elementaries, and it's a two-pronged problem. Is like I would love to. First of all, financially, state doesn't give the money. You would have to have a large parcel tax to go in every year to be able to. And the other problem is we're in a teacher shortage. So when I go out and look for teachers, I can't foresee me hiring another group that if you're going to do that. So it sounds great, but it's we have a problem here in the East Bay. Retaining teachers, we're doing what we can to compensate them. It's still not enough. I lost 10 great teachers this year. They said, hey, I'm moving to Sacramento because, teachers want the dream too. They want to own a home. They want to start. So moving to places like Sacramento or places like that where they can own a home. And so there's a big challenge here in the East Bay that is an effect of the booming technology where the housing prices are going up. The rents are going up. So, our enrollment is getting to a point where we feel like it's a comfortable enrollment. The big thing is we're not declining, because when you decline, that's how you lose your money. Okay, and so, $10,000 a kid, every kid counts, and it also shows when you're stabilizing your enrollment, when you're a little above or you keep going, people are saying, we like that school. We want to come to that school.
It creates
and
that draw.
So we're creating, we got a lot of buzz that we have people every day coming. I hear what's going on in San Leandro. I want to come here, and I have people approach me on the street. People call me and say, hey man, we like what's going on here. We're excited and we want to be a part of it. And that's good. That's kudos to everybody, teachers and everybody. The custodians, it's clean and stuff like that. But no, we're fine with space right now. I mean, we used to be 20 to 1, so you had all these different classrooms. We're not anymore. So you still have some space. But high school's the problem. I think at some point, if you look at our demographics, they say we do demographic studies every year. They could say in 10 years you may need another high school. Which is interesting because we used to have one.
Hey, what happened to that? Now it's a mall. With regard to how many kids come from over the border in Oakland, do you have any idea? Do we have an idea how many kids are coming?
It's less than, I would say less than 5%. You get some that trickle over, and it's some come from San Leandro because you have that kind of gray area of our two districts. We have some people that work here that come from farther away as Antioch, and they bring their kids on the inter-district. But it's not like we have a ton of space, but And some kids need a different opportunity in a different school, and they come over here and it's a different opportunity for them. So we're just excited that people are asking to be in.
Right. No.
And when they were asking to get out,
Right.
we changed that narrative.
You know, the other day, my kids went through school in the 90s, and learning to read when I was a kid was all phonics. You sounded out words, and there was an article a couple weeks ago about just the way kids were taught to read in the 80s, that is through kind of recognizing the word rather than sounding it out. Do we teach our kids to read through phonics? Or?
I think they use a combination of everything. I think that when you go through the classroom, the best teaching is, let's not get rid of everything just because a new trend comes. Let's integrate it, you know, and that's what we do really good in California is something new comes and we throw the rest all the way.
Right.
So I think you're still going to see phonics in there. You're going to see recognition. You see all those strategies. A good teacher is going to use all those strategies. Just like, you know, I said earlier about project-based learning. That's nothing new. Good teaching has always said, hey, have project-based learning in there. But now it's become up again. Let's make it a concentration. So because kids do want to be part of a process, you know, and have an end result instead of, again, I think what I'm excited about is we're moving further and further away from this. Let's just read the textbook. Let's have a quiz and a test, and there's no exploration of the topic or things like more real. With technology gives us that too. It gives some of our kids the opportunity to get real world experiences, which there's always this misperception that every one of our kids' parents take them to the museum, or they're traveling every summer, or they're going. They're not. You know, and it's we can bring those opportunities through technology, and that's the difference between some of our. When you make connections also with other communities that are different than us, their opportunities are much different, you know, and so it's kind of comparing, you know, it's hard to compare the two.
Right, and it whets kids' appetites to see what's available, what's possible, and you know, it drives them forward. You know?
Oh, they are. We're seeing with our technology more engagement, because it's bringing in these worlds. And these access, like we have virtual machines and virtual reality, what they call them, in our middle school libraries and in some of our elementary. And these are things used at Stanford. And these kids are exploring things that are blowing their minds because they don't get access to stuff somewhere else. So it's a balance, but you got to give a little taste. I want them to leave San Leandro if they go to college or something and know that, I've seen that. I know what that is. You know what I mean? So.
Well, listen, this has been a great conversation. I appreciate you coming in. It's very heartening to hear kind of what's going on in the school district. And you know, we'll have you back here 6 months or so.
Oh, I'd love to come
talk
back.
about it again because people like to hear what's going on with our kids. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Greg.
And have a good day.